You've most likely heard this week about the red dye number 3 being banned by the FDA in the US. What does that mean for us here in Canada? I'm kind of really curious. So if you like eating, those red gummy worms, anything with red dye in it, like those maraschino cherries, you might have been using them for baking. But now all of a sudden, those things are getting banned in the US. Here with us this morning is Dr. Emma Allen-Verco, Professor and Canada Research Chair, Department of Molecular and Cellular Biology at University of Guelph. Hi, Dr. Emma Allen. Are you with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you for having me.
Perfect. Thanks so much for joining us. So can you tell us a little bit more about this ban of red dye number 3 and why they banned it?
Yeah, sure. So this is it's a fairly long story. I'll try and cut it as short as I can. So this is a particular dye that's used in Canada. We call it erythrocin. In the US, it's called FD&C number 3. It's a dye which has been banned in the US for use in cosmetics for many years, but has been allowed as a food additive and a drug additive, and in Canada as well. And the reason that it has recently been banned is really due to consumer pressure and the invocation of a particular law that exists in the US that doesn't exist in Canada. And on the basis of some research that was done several years ago now and has been reviewed many times, that shows that this particular dye has been associated with the development of a very specific form of cancer in rats.
Wow.
The issue is that this cancer, you need to give these animals quite a lot of the dye, first of all, in order to cause this issue, and second of all, the mechanism for this particular type of cancer is a hormonal mechanism which has been shown to not really exist in humans, and so there's a sort of a question and a about whether or not this research is even appropriate to do to be able to say whether or not this dye causes cancer or not.
Well, so I guess I have so many questions. One question is why did they ban this? Like, as in, you can't use it on your skin, but you could ingest this. That seems crazy to me, just off the top.
Yeah, now that's a question which I really couldn't tell you the answer to, and that's out of my level of expertise. I think there's been a history of this. Again, a lot of law has been into play when we think about this, these laws don't exist in Canada. They're not the same laws. And so I really couldn't tell you the answer to that, apart from the fact that I'm a little bit stumped as well. And I think that one of the reasons that the FDA has created this ban is really in part to remove that dichotomy, that they are banning it for one thing and not banning it for another. And that seems, that led to a lot of consumer grief, if you like, in the US, and it was consumer pressure and consumer lobbyists that eventually forced the hand, I think.
And so why hasn't Health Canada banned it here?
So it's a really difficult question to answer because Health Canada, they're in a tough spot. They follow the science, and the science does suggest that this particular dye in the quantities that it's allowed in Canadian foods and beverages, it probably poses a very, very low risk. My personal, I'm actually coming this from the direction of another type of dye which I study, which are azo dyes, other food dyes. These are artificial dyes. The issue that I have with all of these dyes is that some of the research I don't believe is complete. I'm a gut microbiologist. I study the gut microbiome, and I'm particularly concerned, as are a growing number of other scientists, by the fact that the testing that has been done has not really taken the microbes that live in your gut into account. And these microbes can have a big role in how these dyes are metabolized and what they can do to the body. We just haven't really had the time or the money even to spend to study it. And so that then creates an issue, because now we have a product which we're adding to food, an artificial product. The other side of the coin of this, which I actually think is probably the more important thing, is why do we add these dyes to foods in the first place?
Yes, that was going to be my question. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, and the reason for that is really for no other reason than it makes food look pretty. You know, it's said that we eat with our eyes, and that's very true. And when food is heavily processed or it's manufactured, as it is in the case for many of the foods for which this dye is added, it isn't particularly appealing to look at the end of the day unless you add something to make it look pretty.
Wow! And can we let's back up for a second. Actually, what foods would you see this red dye number 3 in?
Yes, that's a very good question. And all of these artificial food dyes, even the ones that I work on, are very much associated with processed foods like candies and sodas, sorts of processed drinks, even some processed meats. Maraschino cherries is the one that is mostly associated with erythrocyan, but cake frostings, all of those kinds of things.
Wow. And what other countries have banned this, have also banned this red dye number 3?
I believe in the EU, erythrocyan is not used, and there or maybe a ban is too strong a word, but there are much heavier regulations about the use of artificial food dyes in general. Partly because I think that there's a realization now that there are alternatives available which are naturally sourced and probably much safer.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I guess, when you're talking about the studies you don't feel are conclusive, but I think, any risk of cancer is too great, no?
Well, that's my opinion, but that, again, is my opinion. I think Health Canada are in a difficult position because they follow the science. They are, and the science suggests that the risk is low. But I wouldn't say that the science suggests that the risk is completely absent. On the other side of the coin, there's the food and drug companies, these large companies that lobby to keep these kinds of additives in place because it makes the production of food cheaper. Really, that's what it comes down to. And so, there is a sort of a question about, what should we as consumers be ready to accept.
Absolutely. I think it's scary. I think it's interesting that some countries have chosen to ban it. They're banning it topically, but not when you ingest it. And, the deadline for companies to actually remove this isn't until January 2027. So I think that as consumers, we're all just going to have to be smarter about maybe we rethink buying these kinds of foods in the first place since they haven't been banned yet. And this ban doesn't even take into effect for a couple of years. But Emma, we've run out of time and this has been a really fascinating conversation. We'll probably have you on back again to talk about something else. Thank you so much.
Okay, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much. That was Dr. Emma Allen-Verco. She's a professor and Canada Research Chair, Department of Molecular and Cellular Biology, University of Guelph. She is smart.